Hello, and welcome to Into the MoTaverse. This is a podcast hosted by myself, Rosie Sherry, for Ministry of Testing, where we explore all things tech, quality, and testing. And today I have in the room Emma Armstrong. She's been a long time person in tech, I would say, probably the same amount of time as myself, going back to the year 2000, I think. Previously starting out in testing and moving around into Scrum type roles, Agile roles, and now engineering management. But yeah, we have a little bit of history through the Ministry of Testing, ACA, or also known as the MoTaverse. But yeah, it's good to catch up. Personally, I'm keen to catch up with a few people that have been around and see where they're at and see how they're thinking about tech in general. But yeah, thank you, Emma. It's good to have you here.
Hi, Rosie. Thanks for having me. Yes, I think we met in Cambridge before you even moved down to Brighton all those years ago. So, yeah, I started out in quality, so working at Arm, and then I stayed in quality for a fair while, doing test management and test lead. Then I moved a little bit more into the Agile space, but still looking at quality. And I spent a long time in the Agile community, which I still hope I'm part of. But again, I've kind of stepped away from conferences a little bit over the last few years. And then I started doing engineering management, I want to say about 3 years ago or so. And I'm actually head of engineering where I am now. Looking after a relatively large team directly at the moment. So 16 direct reports, which is probably not good for them or me. But it's one of those where I think, again, quality is everywhere. And the beauty of kind of being head of engineering gives you that opportunity to help make sure it's shaped in all the right places. But I think it was a great introduction into the world of engineering. So yeah, it's helped shaped my views. And I think it is one of those, no matter what you do in tech, knowing how to make sure it is quality is key to every stage and every aspect of it. So it's been a good foundation.
That's awesome, because I often see the questions posed within the community that what's next for people in quality is like, how do they get to the next stage in their career? And I've seen quite a few people go into engineering management over the years. I'm curious, do you have any stories or any insights of or any tips about what was that journey like for you, and what helped you take that leap?
I think some of it comes from the fact that I find a lot of testers are exceptionally organised. They've got good attention to detail, great planning, and they have to have great communication skills. So all of those things then help stand them in good stead for any role in there. I slightly segued into the sort of the Scrum Master role, as you said, because again, what I realised was I could influence quality earlier on almost in the process. Yes, it's great that within Agile people could voice their quality concerns early in the process and be part of that planning. But actually, as a Scrum Master, you could ask those probing questions and facilitate the conversation to help surface them early on. And then within Agile, I think I reached my technical ceiling. Yes, I am technical, but there's some amazing people who, again, when it comes to the end of the day, they love technology. They design things, they create new apps, they do things like that at the weekend. Whereas I have to admit, I'm an awful person for picking up a trashy book or watching some absolute escapism TV, because my interests weren't in technology to that level, and I didn't have the passion that they had. So I think I put a ceiling almost on my progression in tech. Now, whether it's true, but I hope it's true, but I'm a good people person. I've had that going for me over the years. And again, I've met some great people who've helped shape me, because I was definitely someone who was probably more vocal about quality, but not understanding always the business implications. So people have taught me how to frame things. Now, I think someone years ago mentioned how as a tester you need to also be a salesperson, and I didn't understand it for a very long time. But you have to frame things if you want to advocate for things in the right way. So I think I've tempered myself a little bit over the years, but I think I've lent into the communication and the people side of things, and I think again become more nurturing, had that coaching and mentoring component of me that's got stronger, and therefore moving into engineering management and test management, things like that, allowed me to harness those people skills that I really needed to move into that engineering management type role. But I think, again, if you've got those technical skills and the passion for it, you don't have to go this way. But I think I did. I reached a ceiling. I can still have a good conversation about tech, and I still love it. And I remember my dad years ago saying that he still saw my eyes light up when I said, "Well, I saw the machine and it had arm cores in it, and it was this." And I still get that. I still nerd out a little bit. But yeah, I've lent into my strengths on the sort of organisation, the planning, the nurturing of people, and watching other people succeed is how I've kind of reprioritized or reevaluated my value add. So you swap from, and again, we've had to do it even in testing. Years ago, the badge of honor was how many bugs you could find. Then you had to adapt to know that you were adding value when there were no bugs in what you were producing as a team. That was where you were adding that value, but earlier. And now it's watching other people thrive and, of course, get deliverables out the door. But again, more focused on the flow, the processes, the people within those processes. And that's how I've transitioned through.
It's interesting, right? Because even now that you say bugs, like the badge of honor kind of thing, it makes me laugh. But I've also been thinking about, like, based on the stuff that we have on the MoTaverse that teaches about like logging bugs, what is bug management and all of that. But more recently, I've been thinking about that. I kind of want to have conversations with people about what do bugs look like now, and how do you treat bugs? And it's like, because in the past it's like, oh, let's log a bug, but like now, at least in my context, it's like I don't want to log bugs. Everything I do is like about not logging bugs unless I have to, because it feels like extra work, or it feels like it might go there to die or something like that. And actually, like internally, we're like a small team, and we don't actually have a bug tracking system. So that kind of feels nice. We just post things to Slack and they get done, or they go in the backlog kind of thing. So I'm curious, like in your context, what does bug management look like, and how has it changed?
In some ways, it hasn't changed at all. So we, sadly, still get really poorly written bugs that come in. I think they've become a lot more the sort of unreproducible bugs, or the nuance, the race conditions, the timing, so they are more difficult to then debug and find. And unfortunately, sometimes we don't get the details, or again, people don't know how to capture the right evidence to help us debug them. So I think it's got more complex when it comes to solving bugs. Especially where I work at the moment, the testers are fantastic about finding the easy ones, and the kind of the really obvious ones, they don't get through. But then there are the ones that are more nuanced that are still getting through. For a while, I ummed and ahed about the administration. I definitely would always preference talking to a developer, just getting something fixed, because it was quicker to get them to fix it than it was to raise it and put the bug in. Where I find some people still like that known state, so they know there was a bug, they can check it's gone and go forward, and so they still appreciate that kind of list of things to check through. But I think it also depends what phase you are in the product. So one of our products is quite established, therefore it's almost that standard bug raising and fixing. Then the other products in R&D. And so again, the question is, do you need to have a record of a bug that was found? Or again, if a developer fixes it before you even know it existed, what's the difference? otherwise. And I think some of it is still people just wanting to be organized, not wanting to miss things. So we tend to accommodate personalities and what's needed, but how we record them might be different. It might be a list in a document rather than going into an actual bug management system. The one you mentioned, though, about the do you fix it or does it go on the backlog? I think that's the difficulty. If you don't maintain quality early, it's really easy to create the cone of shame, as I call it, with the bug creation rate and the bug fixing rate. And then the amount of time that's lost by many people trying to recreate a bug, see whether it's still happening, etc. I'm still a firm believer in effectively a zero bug tolerance. If you can raise them in the moment they're found, you're more likely to get that information you need to fix it. You're more likely to be able to find the problem, and you're also fixing things that people are finding. So therefore, it's relevant because someone just found it and they came across it, which means it was in their path. So again, for us, we have a slightly more responsive approach to things that are found now, whereas things that were found quite a while ago generally don't get addressed. But we still do an assessment, of priority and risk, but it's keeping pace with where people are. And currently they're using these parts of the system or they're finding these things out. So then addressing them quickly is more useful for customers and others.
Yeah.
But I think the old problem of a good bug report is still well and truly there.
It is, right? I hadn't actually heard of the cone of shame, which is that a thing?
I'm sure I've stolen it from somewhere, but yes, when your two lines of your diagram are going slightly in the wrong direction, there is a difficulty in the middle to address. So
I'm gonna have to pick that one up. But yeah, makes me laugh. You alluded to agile and questioned whether you're still part of that community. I guess what's changed, and I guess the whole point of our conversation, or at least from my perspective, is to look at change and look at how things are going. And I've not really been a deep part of the agile community, so I'm curious, is or has agile changed, and where is it heading for you? Do you care about all the agile things that were from the past, or is it what's happening now that's kind of helping people think about creating good products, essentially?
I think, again, I was immersed in that community, and I still absolutely respect and appreciate all of the learnings I got out of there and the amazing people. It's the same with the test community. I think the people make those communities. The difficulties I have almost nowadays is I can't necessarily determine exactly where I'm picking my ideas from. Because again, whether it's lean, whether it's agile, whether it's even waterfall, there were great things in all of those things. What I'm struggling with more, or wrestling with more, is how do we apply them to the current state of affairs? So waterfall, we did everything at the pace together collectively. It was slow, it was rigorous. We thought we'd planned it all and it was great, but then we found out that we were getting feedback too late in the cycle to be able to deal with it. Agile, we then took a team together on shorter, smaller increments of change, iterated and incrementally improved things as we went through. Where I find myself right now is trying to deliver features, but they're not necessarily quick to deliver. So therefore, then having the incremental or iterative cycles on them, well, the customers have moved on. So again, they want to move on to the next feature. And so it's actually kind of blending, improving the existing features with delivering new and required features. But also with the use of AI, trying to keep a team together is getting almost more difficult. We've got people working at very different paces with the multiplier effect of AI compared with one another, and therefore the pace of change isn't constrained in the same way as it was. And I'm not sure I've found a process or approach, and what I'm grappling with at the moment is how do we keep a team together, keep the flow of value at a level of quality that we want within that system.
Yeah.
And the people aspect of it is some people can multitask really well. I know we can't as humans, but we feel like we're great at it, and we can keep all of those plates juggling and spinning. It's probably not a good idea to juggle plates either, but we can keep all of that going, and we think we're good at it. But some people actually don't work that way. They like to be nice and methodical and logical and work through. So therefore, having two different agents doing different problems and solving those at the same time, it doesn't actually make them more productive. It slows them down because they don't enjoy the context switching, or they can't keep the cognitive load in their minds at the same time. But also, you can speed up one part of the process, but we need to speed up all of the equivalent parts of the process to make sure that, one, we're doing our due diligence. And one of my things over the years has been making sure you design for testability. Retrofitting those things is really hard. So are we having the right conversations up front and then using AI to do the development? But then also, how do we speed up the downstream things so that we can still keep that flow through the process? And I think, it is shifting how we need to look at things. One, the disparity between different people and their approaches is becoming more evident to me than it has before. But also, how do we enable the checks and balances and validation at the same rate as people are improving their productivity in those early stages? So it's creating different, I should call them opportunities, but right now they feel a bit more like challenges than opportunities. But yeah, that is the tricky thing, and yet we still want to maintain our bar of what quality is, what a delivery of a product looks like, but the human change component is playing a part in that, and I think it is easy to. It's always been easy to work on lots of things and look busy, but maybe not busy on the right things. But now it's trying to whittle out what's actually improving productivity. Is this of benefit, and how does it fit into the ultimate process overall?
Yeah. So how would you say is the best way, or what can we do, or how are you thinking about the challenges if they're not keeping in pace? For example, like if there's been too much, let's say, code being shipped and testing isn't keeping up, what do we do, or how do we design in the testability aspect so things do become more stable?
I think planning is still key. That's slowing down to speed up. So those conversations as far left as they can happen is really important. And also working out how you're going to use AI, and potentially even using AI in that planning phase is absolutely fine. But it's a case of making sure that they happen. And also having the conversation about how you're going to address that sustainable pace and that flow all the way through the system. So again, working out what those mitigations are. I think for me, we've always welcomed diversity of whatever shape and form that it takes. The question is, how do we create an inclusive environment for that diversity when it's about pace? Especially when it can be quite a large disparity because of the way people are working and how they're using AI. Whereas before, of course, there's always been difference and different people work at different rates, but it's trying to keep that together. And for me, the impact on humans and how they're feeling within that is number one priority that I need to look at. But as an immediate, as I say, checking the planning and making sure that's still happening and we're not moving too fast at that phase. There's a great book, How Big Things Get Done. And I can't think of the author, but I've read that recently. But they, again, said it, thinking and really making sure you have a plan. And it's not about a long plan, and it's not back to waterfall planning for multiple months on end, but it's about having that conversation and making sure you're asking the right questions. And one of those, of course, has to be, how are we going to test this?
Do you think there's a problem, like, where does this like need for pace come from, where at the beginning it outpaces, with the building of things, it's now outpacing other areas? Like, why is this like such a lack of consideration for the bigger picture, right? For whether it's quality, whether it's customers, what the risks and all those things. It's like, well, how did we get here? Help us out. It's like, what's going on?
I think that, the people who are utilizing AI in that way really do care about the bigger impacts, want to maintain the quality. But it's actually about their unique capability. It's almost like, again, a Usain Bolt can sprint, others can't sprint. So right now, tools have been provided that maximize certain characteristics and capabilities in a human being, and some of us just don't have them to that same level, or can't harness them in that way, or just haven't found our rhythm with them yet. So it might be that more of us adapt and can utilize them, or again, we've got differences in the type of work people are doing. So again, you can't ask AI to have a nice conversation and check that your employee is happy and healthy today. There are certain things we can't give to AI, which means for a person who's got a lot of those types of tasks and activities in their day, they're all still there, and they're not able to be paralyzed. Automation's always been great, and for me, I know this simplifies it greatly, but AI is automation. It's just a different type of automation, but it is one where you can't use it for certain tasks and activities, and depending on what your day's made up of, your time to utilize it hasn't necessarily increased. So I think some of it is making sure people have the opportunities to learn from others about how they're using AI, what they can do. But again, it moves at a massive pace, and it's working out how to cherry pick or decide how you're going to learn and pick up articles and new information coming out. But again, it's back to learning and having dedicated practice for your learning, and actually using the tools to learn the good, the bad, and the ugly about them, and how you can work. But for some people, it won't resonate with their core. They like structure. They don't want chaos. They don't like things being hectic. Whereas other people, thrive under pressure. Formula One drivers, don't they claim that they're at like their maximum stress levels for a normal human? But that is exactly what makes them great. But I think it's human characteristics that these tools are allowing people to use, and they've always been there, but their own typing skills potentially slowed them down before.
But the Formula One drivers wouldn't be so great without the team around them, right?
Absolutely, and that is the ultimate kind of goal of mine. How do we keep team cohesion through this? And I think that's the sort of messy phase we might be about to go into. How do we get this to work? How do we keep people together? How do we ensure we're still delivering products of great quality? And I think it's the next catch up, isn't it? We've got these great tools. People are starting to get familiar. They're starting to use them. The tools are getting better. There's so many articles about the drastic improvements in, the last year alone. But then how do we fit all of the people and the processes around them to make sure it keeps working? And I think that for me is definitely the people side of the people management and the engineering delivery challenges that I've got to work through, and I don't have perfect solutions by any stretch of the imagination, but I can see the issues. It's now trying to work out how to work our way through them.
Yeah, especially if you say things like you said earlier, AI is automation. So what does that mean for all the automation that you've done in the past? Does that change how you've done things? Are you going to do things differently? How are you thinking about that?
I don't think we're necessarily tackling that issue specifically. It's finding the right tool for the right job. So, I mean, we've talked about things for years. In testing, there are some tests you never automate because there isn't the return on investment of doing so, or there are multiple reasons why you might not automate a test. But again, what is the right tool for which job? And I think, there's some things where I really appreciate using AI myself. So again, career framework is quite great for looking at things like that and helping put those together. But when it comes to my actual personal thinking, it doesn't speed up how quickly I can solve an actual internal question to myself. But with the automation, there are some. I'm not actually sure whether we've even considered how it's going to change those things for us.
Which is interesting within itself, right? It's like when everything's changing so fast and there's so much pressure to do all the things, it's like, what do you tackle? It's like, and if you have a history of, I guess a long-standing product as well, and you have something that works, and maybe the automation that exists is fine as it is, why would you rush to change it when everything's up in the air? Anyways, it's like everything's changing so quickly. But yeah, I mean, I guess like the trend is like there's a lot of pressure from all angles. It feels stressful as anyone in the team, right? And we all feel like we don't know what's going to happen next. How does the business above you support you, or how do you see, how are you trying to communicate to upper management about the things that you need or decisions that they're trying to make? If they're, are they pushing for more AI and are you pushing back, or how do you find that balance to support your team but also support the business?
I'm really fortunate. Probably some of the best leaders that I've ever worked for approachability and just that ability to have conversations. Even they aren't pushing for more automation. However, we had to deliver in that space for our own product. So that was a steep learning curve in itself. I think what we're mindful of is the cost implications on us. The number of builds going through increases when the development increases. Therefore, the cost of those builds going through increases, but also the balance of what tools do you have available for people and what don't you, and how are people using the tools, but then also how do we, and again, never enjoyed this as a measure, but how do we measure productivity? Like, what are the true gains of the tools and what we're using? And those are lots of challenges. And again, our costs are increasing, but whether it's the equivalent of hiring another person, that is yet to be seen on the gains there. And I think, again, the other reason to what I said earlier about kind of the planning and the other checks and balances within your process, one of the things we really relished, especially in the tech community, is pair programming, code reviews, synchronous code reviews, whereas again, when you have one developer who is multiplying themselves, you still need that independent outside view to come in. So again, you still need the other people to match them so that they can do all of those parts. The challenges, again, I think one we are seeing is it feels like we are all busy and more busy, but whether that's resulting in deliveries and increased delivery of what the business needs, there's some kind of question of whether that's what we're achieving at the moment. And I think it does feel like a state of flux. And the kind of how long you give it to know whether this is flux towards a good state or flux in the wrong direction. I think, time will tell on some of that. But again, very fortunate about the conversations I can have within the business. But there are some questions we just don't have the answer to, even when it comes to price pointing of AI solutions that you're offering as a company. And sadly, it's also going back to statistical maths, which wasn't my forte. But yeah, back on the kind of Gaussian distributions and things like that to determine things. But yeah, it's different skills again. Like even in management, different skills. There was managing a budget, but you bought something, and it was a yearly cost. Now it's an erratic cost based on human behavior. And where do you cap it? And kind of when you get something, taking something away from someone is really obvious. So I think it's also, if you've ever had one of those promptings, or even on your phone with the predictive messaging, when you don't have that, you really notice you're way slower. Once you got used to it, that is. But it is, so it's also, again, if you run out of tokens partway through the month, what does that mean? So new questions being asked, and not exactly concrete answers on all of them, which is
And does
tough.
it end up in the future just costing so much but you can't go back because you've invested into that approach? It's just like the default of let's do it in AI, but then the costs escalate. But maybe there's the Moore's law where things do get cheaper over time, but you just don't know, right?
No, and there's definitely that possibility, and kind of knowing what is good investment in token usage and what isn't could be different per person. But we definitely don't have the things in place yet to know that, have a conversation about it, or do something about it depending on what the outcome of that conversation is. So there is a lot to learn in this space from all aspects, but there's definitely all those considerations from management side, and I think for business, and then you've also got the sustainability side of it. We have to be mindful. I kind of, not to speak about family, but my children are not happy about the whole concept of AI, and it's not just what they're seeing; it's the from a job future point of view that gives them uncertainty, but it's also the sustainability side. Trying to balance all of that are new management conversations that we weren't having 5 years ago.
It's interesting, right? How do you how do you deal with that? How do you as a manager get support for that? How do you cope with that, or what kind of new skills do you think you're learning that perhaps like an engineering manager 5 years ago didn't need to have?
I think this is probably not the right answer, but having someone that's safe to rant at within any business is always still vital. And so you do need that safe space to say, kind of, okay, this is really starting to get to me. And I think that's important for anyone, no matter what your role is, and to have those discussions. For me, luckily a lot of people send great articles, so again, there's lots of reading that goes on, and I still, again, I'm an avid reader, so I try my best to at least make sure there is a work-related book every other, between my trashy rubbish that I pick up. But so there's still keeping myself abreast of those things. But I've also got some really supportive colleagues, and we look at the costs together, and we had a conversation about them. But we are learning as we go on a lot of this, and I think that's often been the case with jobs in our industry. But I do think some of the people management or the cost, they're just changing. They're different. They were the sort of same topic. There was an issue 5 years ago for managers, but it's just a different manifestation and what it looks like. But I think there is a learning as you go aspect to this, definitely.
It just seems like the level of intensity has risen so much that I often joke and I say that I wish I could go back to 2019, just like pre-pandemic, pre-AI, and how life seemed so simple back then. And it's just like, that's a useful frame of mind for me to think that, oh my God, things have changed so much, and how we expect to keep up. How should we keep up? How do we want to show up? Especially for, when you say things about the future generation and your kids, and it's like, they don't want it. Why are we, being almost forced, I think, into this world? Do we have a choice? We might not have a choice, but it's like, where are these conversations happening, and how can we build the, if we're thinking about quality, is also quality about, thinking about the future, thinking about, the climate, the way we want to live our lives. And, it's like, increasingly, I think we can't switch off, or we feel like we can't switch off, because we always feel like we need to keep up. It feels intense.
In so many ways, I think it's intense. I think for me, watching the test side of delivery, we want to shift left. Yeah, we want people to be involved earlier, but then when the developers get more productive, what does that cause? People to be more reactive. So then we're creating that kind of vicious cycle that we can't then get out of. And then also, if the people kind of looking at the test and ensuring that last stage, well, then how do they get the space to even look earlier, and also to look at the new tools? So again, we're forcing them effectively to not have time to upskill themselves and expedite later parts of the process. So I think we have to create space in those areas. But when you mentioned the pandemic and the intensity of it, I definitely feel more stressed than I used to. I even mentioned to someone at the weekend, I would quite happily get rid of my mobile phone if I could. Every time there's a message, every time I have it on silent permanently. I still see it flash, I still see it move, and if I am holding it, then I can go check things and I can see what's going on. So I definitely feel that my kind of base stress level is higher than it used to be, and disconnecting feels harder than it used to. So kind of, again, I always believe that if you send a message, people do not have to respond. Yeah. And I try very hard, and we use Slack, so I schedule messages to try and get to make sure they come in. But we haven't got an agreed set of rules still. So sort of the social etiquette of when do you send them, when do you not send them. And so again, you take a day off and other people are working, and it's all waiting for you the day you come back. And if they're using AI, potentially it's twice as much work waiting for you when you come back. I mean, these are the realities. And I think this comes down to what you're questioning. We're talking about quality. It's quality of life in so many ways, as well as quality of what we're delivering. And I think there's lots of mixed messaging. Again, the kind of students at school don't use AI. Yeah, you're not allowed to use it. But in work, if you don't use it, you might not be delivering There's certain scenarios where it's unavoidable, and there's ways to use it to help you without it dictating your thinking and who you are as a human yourself. But I think these are all things that we're going to muddle our way through over the next few years. But I do think they are questions that we do need to be asking ourselves. Ultimately, kind of, what's the impact? What impact do we want these things to have? And how can we make sure that it maintains a positive impact in a more holistic
From
way?
a quality perspective, you mentioned designing for testability as an example. Do you have any tips on how to do that? And also just any other quality tips that you might have been experimenting with? Like, I've been thinking about like pair prompting, for example. Is that a practice that is happening or you want to see happen, or anything else like that you found that is interesting? It might not work now, but you're exploring.
I love that phrase about pair prompting, and I haven't heard it before. And I think, again, it makes complete sense. Ours is a mixture of the context engineering and the prompting. So, again, we're more talking about tips and tricks for people to understand how to use our system and how their prompts impact our system. But I think many things have stayed the same, but I think the use of AI hasn't alleviated the burden that testers feel in the process. So I think, one, as a collective engineering community, we need to look at how do we unburden that, and what kind of tools and what ways things can be used to match things. So again, we have turned on Copilot in our PRs, so there is some feedback. For me, it's a bit like another static analysis tool. But there's definitely getting those views into the system. When it comes to the quality, for me, it really does come down to the conversation and the questions that need to be asked. So it is important that people with a test perspective bring it to the meetings, ask those questions, and basically maximize having that touch point with the people. Because yes, they might be using AI, but it's still the people we've got to influence about how they use the AI. And so, for an example, and I don't know the answer to this, but are people saying in their prompts when they're having the conversation to do develop a feature or anything like that, saying design with testability in mind? Give me a list of the key risks of this work I've done. And I know some people are using it for documentation, but I think, again, those communication touch points with people and from one person to another, that's where we need to expend our energy. Make sure that we are still having those, getting the information, and again, still trying to shape people so they know what to look out for early on. But then for me, there possibly is a radical change needed for how you match the pace of increased development activity with the same ratio that you had, but actually potentially, for us, maybe one of our developers has now become 3 people. And so we've talked about ratios over the years and the impact on that. Well, we might be back in a ratio problem that for Agile, we addressed it by, quality is everyone's responsibility, the whole team, and bringing it together there. But I think we've got a dynamic shift here. So what's the shifting paradigm for us, and how do we address it? And that's where I think the more radical change might need to be. But I'm not going to profess to know how or we do it. And that's the hard thing about management as well, isn't it? You step away. So I don't feel the pain of the day-to-day that people in different roles within my team are feeling. So then, of course, you try and understand and empathize, but you're not truly feeling the pain. And that, I think, has such a difference. So again, I am going to try my best to listen to what people are saying, brainstorm, have those conversations, but I have to listen to the people who are feeling the pain every day. And we have to work on the whole holistic picture. We can't just look at one part of it. But I think, that might be a mistake that we've made recently, that we're just realizing now. Yeah, we've increased productivity here, but we haven't addressed what that looks like for
So it's
us
not really
as a whole.
increasing productivity if it's not looking at the whole picture, really.
And no, unless, again, it's not too risky, merge it anyway. And then what's the impact on quality? So it's the new challenges, honestly, that are transpiring even in the last weeks. This is what we are now seeing. And now we've got to work out how to make it better.
It's funny because I look back
that.
at past years, I guess, and it was easy to give answers to problems. And I feel like that's almost gone. Like no one knows the answers, and we're all just like trying to make the best decisions possible with what we know. Does that ring true? Yeah.
It definitely feels less concrete. I think it's one of those interesting ones. For me, when someone asks you a question, you give an answer, and then the longer that answer almost sits with you, the more nervous you get. I even get it with like someone asking for the definition of a word. I give an answer and then go, I'll just Google it. I wonder whether our confidence in ourselves is as strong as it used to be. And because we've got these tools and these things there, we start defaulting to asking them, or because again, yes, we're supposed to be more productive, and we could ask the question to the system and it will give us it will type 600 words way quicker than I can type about 5 when we get them back. But I think that honest belief that we actually know what's the right thing to do, that for me just doesn't feel as strong and confident as it used to. And so, yeah, it is tough. And I think things did feel more distinct, whereas now it is a little bit more loose. Well, this might work and we can try it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough. I was even thinking about like over the weekend I was trying out Lovable because they had free credits, and I hadn't really tried building something via prompting before, so I thought I'd give it a try. And I had something for my community stuff, database in Notion, loads of data basically, and I tried to rebuild it in Lovable. It was really nice, but as I was doing it, I'm going to write a short post about this, but as I was doing it, I was just testing all the time, and like my prompts probably sucked a bit. It was fun seeing, asking it to fix the bugs and stuff and the problems, and seeing it try to, figure out what the problems were. But also it was just like random stuff that would change for no apparent reason. I'm like, why is that gone? And like, why is that link? It was broken before, we fixed it, and now it's broken again. So, and just like, I guess like half of my time at least was spent testing. It's very basic. It's not a complicated thing. It's just a bunch of information. But it was definitely interesting, just like trying out the process and seeing how it is, and just kind of thinking about what is the work that I'm doing. And it's like, yes, I'm part designer, yes, I'm part builder, but also I'm doing a lot of testing. And because I know about testing, at least to a decent level, then I know where to look for the problems, right? So it's so interesting to go through like a small scale exercise to try to understand the like bigger implications.
And I think what you said there is the key. About testing, therefore you can keep your eye out for it. But I do believe that there are some people who are great at that detail and that test perspective, and they're not always the same as the people who are doing the creation side of things. And this is the ultimate difficulty is as AI comes into us. If you don't know the answer to the question, it's very hard to hold anything to account, and that in itself is ultimately where the difficulty lies. If someone said to you, oh yeah, well, there's this game golf, and you have an albatross and an eagle and a birdie, I think for most people you would look at that and go, really? That doesn't sound right. You have to know that is true, that is fact. And I think, again, to your earlier question, concrete facts, what are our sources of what's fact and what's not fact, and where do we come from? But again, if you don't know the answer to the question you're asking, you're not necessarily in a very good position sometimes.
Yeah. And actually, what I came away from that thinking was, obviously, I need to spend a bit more time with it, but I lacked confidence in making the switch, at least at this point in time. I'm worried that I'm going to lose the data. I'm worried that, I don't understand what's actually going on underneath the hood. If I switch over, I have all this information around community building that I've built up over the years. Is there a risk that I'll lose it because it might just decide to delete it? And then it's like, how do I back it up? Do I want to back it up? Or how do I know that the backup is correct? And all these questions that it feels really nice to be able to build something so quickly. It looks nice. I added a color scheme, a rainbow scheme. I was like, oh, this is so cool. But like underneath, I have this layer of insecurity that it might accidentally just delete all my 5 years worth of work. And it's like, yeah, what do you do about that? And how do you build the systems in place to protect you? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think as an individual and as teams and companies, this is where change management is once again at the forefront. Virginia Sattard, what does it look like to change and to change at this scale? And we're very early on in this change journey, and people are going to go at different rates. But ultimately, we have to go through. So I think it's for each of us, it's going to be navigating
what
that
help
journey
do you think
through it.
You need to navigate through it?
I think for me personally, and I do think it's going to be different for other people, is probably more conversations with people. Some good discussions with people who can challenge my assumptions, my thinking, and give me different perspectives and points of view. Another bit of actually is going to be space to contextualize and process those things that I'm going through and thinking about. I think then, sadly, the third answer is I don't quite know yet. But I think, again, for me, when the burden becomes a human change burden, it's harder. And this is where, again, we need to lean on other people to help us go through the transition. So be that other people's wisdom or just other people to honestly reassure you. Yes, you're looking at the right things or you're going in the right direction. But I think this is where community and camaraderie become really important.
I agree. With the conversations, do you think it's important to have both internal conversations and external ones as well?
Absolutely. I am a firm believer that I would not have grown had I only ever had internal conversations. And that for me was the wonder of the conference circuit and all the people I met through it. It gave me better exposure than I would have ever got within my organisation. So I do think we need to have both, because you then, of course, whatever you do learn, you have to adapt. Is it relevant for where I am, and is it appropriate? But we do need these conversations, and again, it needs to be that safe space where, again, I appreciate my comment might have been provocative that AI is just a form of automation. It's not meant to be provocative. It is just where I'm personally at right now. And people can correct me and talk to me about it. But it is one where that is a place where you can learn, even through saying something that someone doesn't agree with, but they can help show you the differences and where their perspective comes from. And I think sometimes internally, people can walk on eggshells in some of those conversations sometimes. So again, where there's having those external ones, again, you potentially get a little bit more clarity or directness as well.
And I'm conscious of the time. But yeah, any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Again, I want to say it's a interesting space we're in, but I will, in complete honesty, it feels quite hard right now. So again, tech is always exciting, and as I said, I love a bit of tech every now and then, but change is hard, and I feel like this is quite immense, intense change, and impacting so many people in so many different ways. And my role is to get a handle on that, and that's not the easiest thing, but I think community really is going to matter in this as well.
I hope so. I believe so. That's what I'm trying to work on, and I believe, or I think, like, not enough people are talking about it, or they feel like they're alone in the situation. So I hope that maybe, but just by talking about it as much as we can, then we can find the confidence to figure out what the future is, right? But I think with the way the world is, and it's more fragmented, like, people don't know where to go to talk to people online or, in person. But hopefully, maybe community will be the savior. Who knows? I believe we need more of it, and so that's what I'm working for. But yeah, it's good. It's good to talk, right?
It's great to talk, definitely.
Yeah.
And thank you very much for having me.
I need a podcast just to catch up with people, is the conclusion that I've made. Otherwise, it never happens.
I think and it's one of those where I could talk for hours in this environment, because again, it's a place where I won't say things perfectly, but like you say, if it starts the conversation, and just knowing that this is kind of the things I'm thinking about and what's going on.
Yeah, it's good. I'm sure it will help at least one person, if not many more. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Rosie.
I'll see you in the MoTaverse.